Hello folks, I'm here today with the Ford Puma ST-Line X edition. This is the 1 litre mild hybrid mated to the 7-speed automatic power shift gearbox. Puts out 155 PS of power, 0 to 62 time of about 8.7 seconds. What do you think of the styling first off? I have to say, I think it's fun. I don't know if that's an acceptable thing to say, but it is fun. It's quite bold and chunky looking, a little bit quirky, and that's no bad thing. This car is probably the main reason why we no longer have a Fiesta available, because so many people bought this. I think Ford looked at it and thought, actually, we could sell a slightly bigger car, make a bit more money, and it's still got all the same underpinnings. So some of the things you might have enjoyed about the Fiesta may also be true in this, but it's also quite practical. As for pricing, there are lots of options available. They start off about 26.5 grand and go up to almost 35. And when you're at the top level there, you can also look at the new Gen E version of this, which is the all-electric variant of the car, which Ford has very high hopes for. So this engine has been the cause of quite a bit of controversy for Ford in not too distant past. It's the 1 litre EcoBoost. Now, a lot of that controversy came because it had severe reliability issues, mostly caused by the fact it had a wet belt, so a drive belt that sits in the engine oil. That's been replaced in recent years with a chain system, so it should mean that this car's less likely to suffer from an early death. It's also not lacking for performance really, when you consider you've got 155 PS, a 0 to 62 time of less than 9 seconds, and a WLTP figure of around about 48 with this particular configuration. That's not shocking. So the boot size is great. You've got over 450 litres as it stands, and with the back seats flat, you've got 1200 litres, just over. But there's a stroke of genius in here. This is called, I think, the Mega Box. And under there, you've got an 80 litre waterproof compartment that's also got a drain plug. So if you're sticking things like muddy, wet wellies in there, you don't get that all over your lovely carpet or your floor mats. You dump them in there, and then you can literally just wipe it round, rinse it round, pull the drain plug out and get rid of all the damp. What a brilliant idea. It's really clever. You'll also see they've incorporated the parcel shelf or parcel cover. I guess it is more of a cover rather than a shelf because it's cloth. They've incorporated that into the actual boot lid, so that comes right out the way. And that's a really nice way to do it. So many cars now have these kind of pulley stretchy things, and then when you put the car seats down, you've got to find somewhere for that to go. This just seems like an inherently better way to do things, if you ask me. And it's a really nice bit of work by the designers at Ford. So in the front cabin, whilst you're not going to be blown away by the luxury that you find yourself in, it's all really nice and functional, and everything's kind of where you might expect it to be. Just going to talk first about this sort of central console area. You've got the traditional Ford automatic gear shifter. That lever's been in, I don't know how many Fords for how many years, but it's very familiar if you've had a Ford in the past. Something nice about a good old-fashioned lever. I don't mind that at all. You've also got a USB-A and a USB-C down here, and in this one we've also got a wireless charging pad. Double cup holder down here, which is pretty no frills, and a manual handbrake. Then on to this infotainment system. This is the Sync 4 system, which you'll find in a lot of Fords nowadays, and I think it's their best effort yet. An infotainment system seems quite coherent. It works without a great deal of fuss. We have still got a manual volume knob as well, which is a wonderful thing, as well as controls on the steering wheel. Wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto come with this, and the inbuilt navigation software is good enough. This car's also got heated seats and aircon, and the controls for that are all on the front here. We've got heated steering wheel in this one as well. Never have I known such luxury. Apple CarPlay, as you can see, looks great. You've got plenty of real estate for it. It's not all squashed in or compromised as it is on some vehicles. And I think the infotainment system generally is really well implemented. You've also got a nice big colour display for your driver infotainment screen. And everything's quite large. You don't find yourself having to stick on the glasses just to be able to read it. And it all feels quite nicely laid out. Then you've got this massive steering wheel, which, although it's perfectly good, it just feels way too big for this car. It seems like an odd choice. I guess they've gone for one new steering wheel that's going to go across all their cars maybe, and obviously lots of them nowadays are big, but this feels too big for this car. Maybe I'm just being picky or odd in some way. However, feels nice. It's slightly squared off, giving you a little bit of an Austin Allegro vibe. We've also got proper buttons on the steering wheel for things like your cruise control, volume, voice commands, skipping tracks on your stereo, and of course some controls for the driver information display there. Generally speaking, I think it's a really nice cabin that would have benefited from perhaps some slightly nicer materials in places. I don't mind cars just having plain black plastic and stuff, but it doesn't feel like it's going to age incredibly well, some of this stuff. And whilst there are some nice little accent pieces here and there, I think just generally in terms of the sort of perceived quality, if you like, of some of the materials, it could have been a tiny bit higher. And because there is some strong competition in the class now. One thing I didn't mention earlier, by the way, is you've also got a heated front screen in this, which is a wonderful thing to have. You've had it in Fords for quite a long time, but not enough manufacturers do it. And I think it's a great thing in a cold country like ours, where you spend a lot of time scraping your windscreen, or if you're a wild man, chucking a kettle of water on it with no fear of what might possibly happen to your windscreen. I've digressed again, haven't I? I always do that. So in summary, it's a bit of a two-sided coin, I guess. They could have spent a bit more on some of the materials and maybe done a little bit more in terms of the overall aesthetic in here, but they've spent money where it counts. Things like the information display, things like the infotainment system. You know, this is so central to everything you do in a car nowadays. And a lot of manufacturers scrimp and save on it, and I don't feel like Ford have done that here. And you do still have some of the nice creature comforts like the heated windscreen. So I guess they've just taken that overall budget and put it in the areas where they think their customers care the most. How much time do they spend stroking this bit of plastic down here versus putting commands in over here? Probably makes sense. So in the back here, it's largely a very happy story. There's plenty of legroom and plenty of headroom, even for someone over 6 foot. A friend of mine was in here last night, 6'2", and he's more than comfortable. Obviously that headroom's a little bit affected by the fact that we've got this big panoramic roof in here, which takes away from it slightly, but your rear seat passengers shouldn't have too many problems. Legroom wise, I'm about 5'9", and I've got about that much. So maybe if you were much over 6'2", you'd struggle for legroom. But pleasingly, there's a decent amount of footroom. Footroom and toe room is something that's often lacking in modern cars. Aside from that, there's not too much to talk about. The plastic on the door cards is a bit meh. They could have done with some kind of cloth or just something a bit more interesting in terms of materials there, because it does feel a little bit cheap, if I'm being honest. And then down here, we've got a 12-volt socket and 2 USB-C charging points. Aside from that, there's not too much of note. One thing I will just say is you would be happier in the back here with 2 adults rather than 3, and you would only fit 2 child seats in the back of the car. The middle seat is kind of a half seat, if you like, and there is quite a sizable lump for the transmission down there. So now we get to the important business of how the car actually drives. Well, the good thing is that it's extremely agile and nimble, and you can dart around in this car a bit like you could in a Fiesta. And as I said, a lot of the underpinnings of the car are the same as the Fiesta, so perhaps that should be no surprise. But this is a bigger car. You know, it's got a big boot, it's got more rear seat room, it's just bigger in every way, but it still does retain some of those characteristics. As for the suspension, this one's the ST-Line X, so it is much firmer suspension, but it's very harsh on uneven surfaces. If I just go over tiny little bumps in the road, you can really feel them. And if you're going on a road that's anything other than perfect, really, you are going to be bouncing around a fair bit. So really consider if the ST-Line X is the one for you, or if you prefer something with slightly smoother suspension. Engine performance is great. I just had a quick getaway there from that junction, and absolutely no problems in that regard. And it's also quite happy cruising along. It's got quite a nice feel to it when you're going along at 60-70 miles an hour. You know, it doesn't feel gutless. It doesn't feel like a 1 litre 3-cylinder for that matter. It handles it all quite nicely. Now, one thing I'm not completely in love with is the automatic gearbox in this car. I feel like it takes away from the refinement quite a lot. Whilst this car's quite well insulated from the noise of passing traffic, it's not very well insulated from the sound of the drivetrain and the wheels. You get a lot of tyre rumble coming through the cabin, and it's just not the most refined thing. And I strangely don't think that gearbox helps. When you're in standard drive mode, it's fine. I don't think it's as good as dual clutch systems that you find in some other brands. The weird thing is when you go into sports mode, because once you're up to speed in it, it feels great. And certainly if you want to drive enthusiastically, and this is a car that likes to be driven enthusiastically when it's safe to do so, of course, sports mode feels great. But when you're in it at lower speeds, you know, when you go into sports mode because you're about to get to a place where you can drive a bit more enthusiastically, it doesn't feel great at all. It really takes away from the refinement of the experience, and it feels a bit sort of weirdly lumpy, and it's kind of an all or nothing kind of thing. So this may be a car that you might prefer with a manual gearbox. Or if you're just in drive all the time and not in sports mode, fine, no problem. Real world MPG is not terrible against the official figures. The official number on this is just under 49 MPG. And today I've been doing mostly town driving. I just drive as I drive, not particularly carefully or not particularly frugally, if you like. And I'm getting 44 MPG, 43.9 at the moment. Last time I looked it was 44.2. Yesterday I did a bit of a longer drive in the car and I got that closer to 47 MPG, again without trying at all, with the aircon on, everything else that I would normally do in any other car. So I don't think that's too bad, but it's not quite a Yaris Cross, for example, which will give you silly numbers. So how would I sum up the drive overall? It's a difficult one actually, because it's got sort of positives and negatives and a fair few of both. It doesn't feel particularly refined, I have to say that. There are certainly more refined cars in this bracket out there in the market at the moment. And I think a lot of people buying this car will mostly be using it as a little run around town, and a little bit of refinement perhaps wouldn't go amiss. However, for a little car that you're going to go around town and you want loads of practicality and stuff, it's absolutely brilliant because it's so agile, and you can go and have some fun with it at the weekend. This car genuinely feels good driving around B roads, and that's not something you can say about a lot of compact SUVs or crossovers or whatever it is. And I take my hat off to it for that, because it is great to come out with a car that's not only practical, but you can also have fun with. Because there aren't too many of those anymore. Certainly not in this segment, that's for sure. So I think the positives far outweigh the negatives, and you know, this is always one of the country's biggest selling cars, and I can certainly see why that's the case. But don't go into it thinking it must be amazing in every possible way because they sell lots of them, because it's not without one or two little faults. Whether they're things that annoy you or not, you know, remains to be seen, but I would say get out there and have a test drive and see what you think. Hope you've enjoyed this one, folks. Please subscribe to the channel if you like honest, straightforward, no nonsense reviews delivered in an unprofessional manner, and please give the video a thumbs up. And folks, if you're interested in possibly leasing a Ford Puma, please click on the link to Lease Loco that's in the video description. That will take you through to all the latest lease deals at the time you click that button, and it helps support the channel. So that's a bit of a win-win. Thanks ever so much for watching, folks. I'll see you on the next one. Huge thanks to all my channel members for your continued support. I really do appreciate it.